Hey, how's it going, y'all? My name is Rosendo from MLH. I just wanted to let y'all know that today we have some more amazing content ready for y'all. We're going to be bringing on Joe Nash from Twilio. I think most of you are very familiar with his abilities and his wizardry with the Twilio API. So without further ado, let me just go ahead and bring him on stream.
Hello everyone, happy Local Hack Day. Thank you, Rosendo. It's great to be back for Local Hack Day Build. I think last time I saw a good number of you would have been Local Hack Day Learn at the end of 2021. If you didn't catch us then, hi, my name is Joe and I work at a little company called Twilio. Let me tell you a little bit about what we do and why we are involved with Local Hack Day this year. So you should now see my screen. I remain up in the corner, and there's some links and some useful info there. Most of the action is in the middle of the screen. So Twilio is a customer engagement platform. We provide you all of the a wonderful suite of APIs to connect your applications to a bunch of ways that you can get in touch with your users, that you can reach out to people via things like SMS, email, video calls, pretty much any way you could want to communicate with someone in 2022. You can do that. Last time for Local Hack Day Learn, we were playing around with WhatsApp and adding WhatsApp to our applications. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to look at a product that Twilio has called Sync, and we're going to look at making things interactive and collaborative using Twilio Sync. So Twilio Sync is a platform that allows you to connect applications and synchronize state between them in a variety of different ways based on different, speeds and needs. So you can do things like create collaborative text editors or create things like Google Docs where, you can edit the same document at the same time, or multiplayer video games. That's what we're going to be doing today. So before that, I want to do a little bit check-in. How is everyone doing in the chat? I will be watching the chat throughout, and I will be sharing some links in there if you want to follow along with the workshop. I will also be throwing out some completed code at the end. Before we dive into the code and get that going, I just want to briefly mention some of the things that we have going for you at Local Hack Day Build. We are a sponsor of the event as a whole, and we will be offering you some challenges, and the first of those challenges is up on the dailies. You can go create a Twilio account and get your free credit. There's a link right here that will get you set up with some free credit for your Twilio account. If you want to follow along with this workshop, you're going to need an account, so go ahead and set that up. If you already have an account from a past hackathon and you need more credit or you need to upgrade, stay tuned, check into the Twilio sponsor channel when it's live on the Discord, and I will be dropping another code in there sometime over the course of Local Hack Day to get you set up. Throughout the week, we're going to be having a variety of challenges based around Twilio Quest. Twilio Quest is our educational video game to help you discover your power to change the world of code. It is a RPG where you can play through a variety of missions to learn various coding concepts. So if you want to brush up on your JavaScript, on your Python, you want to learn about APIs, or you want to learn about Twilio, Twilio Quest is a great and really fun way to do that. A little while ago, we sponsored an MLH hackathon with allowing people to create their own Twilio Quest extensions, their own missions, and some of them have made it into our extension gallery. So if you want to play if you complete Twilio Quest and you want some further missions, and you want to see what some fellow MLH hackers have made, you can also check that out in the extension gallery. We will be running a competition with Twilio Quest throughout the week. It's called a Twilio Quest operation. Instructions on joining that will be up in the daily challenge tomorrow, but basically the person who plays the most Twilio Quest by the end of the week and earns the most experience will be up for winning a prize. So all that said and done, what are we doing in this workshop here today? Well, I mentioned we are going to be using Twilio Sync. Ooh, big product thing. Here we go. We're going to be using Twilio Sync, and Twilio Sync is a great tool to synchronize web and mobile apps through the cloud, so you don't have to run any databases, any services. You can pass data between your applications, between different users of your applications. In particular, we're going to be messing around with this very silly little game that I made. So this is just a Kaboom.js game. If you're not familiar with Kaboom.js, it's a really small little game browser game library made by the folks over at Replit, and this little game is using Kaboom.js and Twilio Sync to enable multiplayer. So here I am jumping about, and over on this one, here I am also jumping about. There we go. That's now coming in. This is me operating it through a different window. If you want to jump into this game, I'm going to post the URL in the chat and hope it doesn't immediately explode. But if you jump onto that URL that I've just posted in the Twitch chat and start moving around, you should see yourself appear on my screen, hopefully, if things are still working. We'll see what happens. So we're going to be building this from scratch today. Well, not quite from scratch. I've got the Kaboom.js project set up for you. There we go. We've got someone in. It's WASD, so W to jump, A and D to go left and right. We've got a player joining me. If you collide with something, you may notice your position goes out of sync. That is my fault for not doing enough client-side prediction. So we're going to be building this. This is using some real-time updating to send the key events to each player's computer, and then the game is actually simulating those key events with their own players. It will get really bad as more players join, because I've done no optimization on the collision or anything. So all of these squares are going to be colliding with each other, and that is part of the fun of game development. But as everyone jumps in and starts jumping around, let's talk a little bit about Kaboom.js. Kaboom.js is a JavaScript library to make games really quickly. It's made by the folks at Replit. You can play with it all on their playground, all on Replit. In particular, today I have got a little GitHub repo set up for you all for starting this from scratch. And if I throw up that code, let me show you what's in it. So this project is just a single HTML file. And in this project, we have about 50 lines of code that set up the Kaboom project. So this includes adding the player, setting up the canvas, adding the key handlers for the movement, and then adding the floor. That's what comes in the starter project. And what we're going to do is go through and add multiplayer to this. We're going to add the ability for those other characters to be rendered and to be seen, as you just saw. So we're going to be doing that with Twilio Sync. I'm going to gloss over some things in this workshop, but those things are all covered in the README, and I will be adding on to these instructions. I pushed this up this morning. I will be adding on to these instructions and answering questions about this in the Discord. But the long and short of it is, this project doesn't use a server. It's entirely serverless. It uses Twilio functions for generating the client token, and that is about it. It uses Twilio Sync for the communication between players. No database. It is just an index.html, a Twilio function, and Twilio Sync. So I'm going to skip over some of the setting up the Twilio functions in this workshop so we can get straight to the sync stuff. But there is, I'll add further instructions on how to do that in the README. What you will find is there's this token generator.js file. This JavaScript file doesn't get run with the project. It gets pasted straight into a Twilio function. So that's a serverless environment. You just want to paste this code straight into the Twilio function. And then that is where you get the client token to use the to send your movement to the other players. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about Twilio Sync. So as I mentioned, Twilio Sync is a state synchronization library, or a platform. It's a way to send state in different ways between different clients, between different websites, between different mobile apps, whatever it is you want to do. In our case, we've got a little browser game, and we're sending the state through that. Twilio Sync has a variety of different objects. The main ones that we care about, well, actually, this is all of the ones we care about, are documents, lists, maps, and message streams. And these all have different use cases, just like other data structures you might encounter. A Twilio Sync document is a single big JSON blob that everyone who's part of your Twilio Sync, network can add and edit stuff into. So documents are really great for things like collaborative text editors. If you wanted to create a collaborative text editor or a programming like IDE that everyone could type in at the same time, a Twilio Sync document is a great place. They can edit the contents of that document, and then those changes all get sent to every consumer of the document. Twilio lists are ordered collections of individual JSON objects, and these are and they're simple to push onto, and then you can query that list for the things you need. There's lots of different use cases for this. So, for example, there's some one of them here is synchronizing location data with the ability to replay old collection states. So anything where the order matters, Twilio sync lists are really useful for. We are using sync lists here in our Kaboom application for the list of players who are currently participating. So we'll see more of them here. Maps are unordered collections of key value pairs. So these are really good for basically anything that you want to be able to query and get specific versions to. Twilio Sync is sometimes used as kind of an ephemeral data store, like not quite a database. Don't use Twilio Sync as a database. But if you wanted to store info from sessions of your applications, maps is a really good object for that. And then message streams are the most exciting to me. Message streams are high throughput streams of JSON objects. They allow you to publish up to 30 messages a second and consume them. So we are using that for the movement in our game. So we're going to be using lists and message streams today. So where do we get started? First of all, we're going to need to initialize our sync client. We're going to need to actually set up sync on our page. One thing you will see that's already included in the GitHub repository if you clone it is I've already included the CDN source for the Twilio Sync library, so you don't have to do that. It's already in there. The Twilio Sync SDK for JavaScript is also on NPM, but because we're trying to keep this example as small as possible, we're using the CDN. So what we're going to want to do to begin with is set up a sync client. So a sync client lets us get hold of all of those, lets us use all of those different data types that I just discussed with you. It lets us create lists, create streams, lets us consume from them. So to actually use Twilio Sync, that's the first thing we need to do. So I'm going to set this up as a little function. By the way, I didn't give my usual warning. Today I am coding in JavaScript. If you do not know JavaScript, do not panic. First of all, this code is going to be small. The final length of the code at the end of this demo is going to be about 150 lines. Secondly, I am not good at JavaScript. The JavaScript you're going to be seeing today is all fairly vanilla JavaScript. There's going to be no advanced JavaScript weirdness. I'm more or less going by what's in the docs. And then finally, Twilio has SDKs available for a variety of platforms. If you're into Android, if you're into iOS, Twilio Sync works on those platforms as well. Twilio has a bunch of other products that you can use during Local Hack Day Learn that have Python libraries, that have Ruby libraries, that have basically any language you could possibly want. So here we go. Did someone say my... Okay, no, we're all good. Perfect. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, the first thing we're going to want to do is get hold of a token that allows us to use Twilio Sync. I'm going to be... basically, it's the content of this token generator JS, but this is going to be deployed in Twilio functions. What this token generator file does is it takes a bunch of our Twilio account information and generates a client access token for the game to be authorized to use, our Twilio accounts and interact with the Twilio API on our behalf. So this is a really important step. You're going to want to set up a Twilio function and paste this code into it. Again, there's instructions in the README on how to get all the information you need. But for now, I'm actually just going to copy and paste my setup for this because no one wants to see me do query parameters. So this URL is my Twilio functions URL. It's a post endpoint because we need to send an identity along, and then we're just going to handle that return, and then we're going to return our completed sync client. So once you have fetched this token and then created the sync client with that token, you are ready to go in using Twilio Sync. Again, Twilio functions allows us to do this without having to manage a server ourselves. It's a serverless function. It's a simple setup. Check out the README. If you have any questions about that, hit me up on the Discord. So now that we have a working sync client, we can use that to initiate sync data structures. We can create those documents, we can create those lists. In our code down here, our Kaboom code, these are a bunch of, this is a kind of utility function, but here is our core game loops. This is where we initialize Kaboom, and this is where we call the game setup. I'm going to do the sync, I'm going to set up the sync client above that. So I'm just going to do a const to our sync client, and I'm going to have it await in its sync client. If you haven't seen await before, async await is a way of dealing with things and requests that might take some time. So here we're making a post request to a website and we need to wait for that response to come back. So there's some waiting that needs to happen before we move on. So we use a wait in JavaScript to make sure that we wait a minute before we go ahead and continue with the code. So that's our sync client set up. And now that we've got our sync client, we can start to do things like creating those documents and those lists. So if I wanted to create a new Twilio Sync document, for example, I would just do sync client document and I can name that document. If you don't name it, it has a default, what we call a string identifier, a SID that gets created for it. But we are going to name ours. So before we think about how we're going to actually set this up, are people still jumping on here? Someone is still jumping around. Okay, so what is happening in this demo? What do we have going on? So we have a bunch of players and they're moving around and their movement is, they're pressing keys and that thing is moving. They can move quite a lot. As you can see, I'm moving quite quickly. And we could have theoretically as many players as we wanted. So with the data structures that I provided earlier, how do we want to model this? So we're going to want a Twilio Sync stream for sure, because this is a high throughput operation, right? If I'm pressing these keys, I'm holding down right now. So that might be sending, 30, 60 events per second to the other players. And so we're going to want a high throughput thing. So we're going to want a sync stream. Each of these players is going to need a sync stream to publish their key press events to, so that the other players get all of their key presses in good time. And that gives us a smooth, someone's trying to jump on my head. So that gives us smooth and good performance. But one of the things with sync streams is from the client, you can't get a list of you can't get all of the other streams that exist in the service. So we're going to want to use another sync data structure to track our users. And that's where the list comes in. So we'll have a sync list to track who is currently playing, to track the players as they join. And then within each person's info in that list will be their stream ID. It'll be the stream that's tracking their movements, and then we can go through the list, subscribe to each stream, and then get their movements and start drawing them. So let's start by setting up that list. I think that's a reasonable place to start. We're probably going to want to separate this into some functions, because we're going to be tidy about it. So I'm going to do this up here, and we're going to want to start with so let's do this to say we're initializing the players, right? So, and we're going to give the sync client. All of these functions we're going to create today, we're going to pass in the sync client, because we're going to be working with the sync client inside. So with that sync client, we're going to create a list. This is going to be the list that tracks our players. And as I said, we want to name these lists because we want the name to be, if you don't name it, it will be a randomly assigned one, but we're going to want all of the players of the game to be subscribed to the same list. So we're going to want to name it. So I'm going to create that list, and then this is a asynchronous function. This will create a promise. So let me zoom in a bit for you. So I'm going to use then syntax here to deal with what's going to happen inside that. So that's going to give me a list. So I'm doing .list to create the list with the name LHD, and then that will create me a list, and then I can actually, I'm going to rename that because that's the name of the other one. We'll call it LHD demo. And then that will create me the list, and then I can do the things I need to do with that list. So I'm going to create a little anonymous function here and handle the things inside that. So what do we need to do inside this list? So we've got a list, and we've said this list is going to keep track of our players. So the first thing we need to do is create our player and add it to the list. Then we need to iterate over the list and find other players. And then we need to subscribe to their streams. I think that's a reasonably accurate summary of all the things we want to do. So we're going to have to create our player first and add it to the list, iterate over the list and find the other players, and then we're going to subscribe to their streams. So let's start by creating our player and adding it to the list. We already create our player object with Kaboom.js. Cool. We already create a player object with Kaboom.js down here. So in our game setup, we've got we create a player just by Kaboom.js works by a bunch of properties, basically. So our player is a rectangle that has a position, an outline, a color, and then has some physics properties. And then to that player, we are adding key press events to track its jumps. To track different key presses. When there's a W, D, or an A pressed, we move it or we jump. So this is the Kaboom side of our player initialization. Let's go ahead and grab this and make a new function, and we'll call it, let's call it init player one. And again, we're going to take the sync client because we always want the sync client, and let's throw it in there. So we've now moved the creation of the player into its own function, and we're going to want to follow up with that, and we're going to want to call this function here. So we're going to do init player one is definitely going to happen in here, and that's going to have to be, we are going to want to assign that to a variable, and that's going to be an await. So we are going to want to make this whole function an async function. Okay. So we've got the Kaboom side of this, but we don't yet have the Twilio Sync situation in here. So we're going to want to, when we have our player, as I said, all of the player's movements are going to be sent via a stream. A stream lets us publish up to 30 events a second. So it's a great vehicle for us to publish all of those movements, right? If I'm mashing that jump key, it's going to be fast enough to get those all of those events down onto it. So first thing we're going to do in this init player one is we're going to set up our stream. So same as before, exactly the same as we did with the list. We use sync client and then dot and then our data structure. In this case, it's going to be a stream. And this time I'm not going to put a name in it because I don't care about the names of the streams, right? The names can be random. Every player that joins, all that matters is that every player that joins gets a stream. I'm seeing a comment there saying, this makes me think I don't know JavaScript. I'm really sorry to hear that, Satish. Let me level with you on the call and say I've been doing JavaScript now for a long time, and I would say I only just started to feel comfortable this past year. And there's two reasons I want to share that with you. First of all, JavaScript is like an enormous language that's constantly evolving. And so if you see me using unfamiliar constructs that you haven't seen before, that you haven't used before, do not worry. There is a million ways to do everything in JavaScript. And just because I do something one particular way doesn't mean that you don't know another way to do that or that my way is better. And then secondly, I want to share that because there's a common thing. I said at the start I was going to be using basic JavaScript. I said that my JavaScript wasn't that advanced, but I have been doing it for a while, and so my perspective on what is advanced or not has probably shifted. So if you have questions about any of the JavaScript you're seeing me do and you want me to explain, just let me know. I might not have time during the stream, but if I will circle back on Discord or vice versa, but if I can, I will explain it. So please call out anything that looks weird. And also, again, I just want to add a lot of the code here is pretty much straight from the Twilio Sync docs. So nothing I'm doing here is from my own imagination. Someone asked what we're building. We're building a multiplayer game. Anub, the Twilio code for existing users has not been shared yet. Drop into the Twilio channel in Discord and I'll be sharing it after the workshop. Okay, so where were we? So we've created our stream. So this stream is where we will add all of our players' events. So for example, we've got this stream, and now when we press key W, the way we publish events is we publish message, right? So stream.publish message. So we're going to add the message publishing to the key presses. So when we press W, our player jumps, but we also are going to publish a message to the stream that our player has jumped. And we do that just by sending key W. I'm going to throw some extra info in here because one of the things you're going to find out about multiplayer game development is obviously you are at the mercy of the network. And so generally, for a whole bunch of reasons, it's also really useful to send around the true player position. We're going to use that to occasionally make sure that where everyone's game thinks the players are is actually where they are. So we're going to copy and paste this to all of the move handlers. So we've now got whenever a key is pressed to move our player, we're actually going to publish that key press to all of the other players who are playing the game. So every player, whenever another player presses a key, their game will know, hey, a player has pressed a key, and that is how we will move other players on the game. But right now we've only done it for our player. So that is our player setup. That is our player well, that's our player created. And actually what we've done here is handled key presses. So what we still need to do is add the player to the list. So that's what we're now going to do. So adding a player to a list, we've created our list up here. And we're still within this function, so our list is still in scope. So one of the nice things about Twilio Sync lists is it's really easy to add, just like arrays, you can push to a list. So it's really easy to add a new piece of information to the list. And so we're just going to add our new, is that correct? Yes, that's correct. We're just going to add our new player to the list. So with this function, we create a stream for the player and we return that stream. Every object we're creating with Twilio Sync has this string identifier. And so what we're going to do on our list, how we're going to track the players, is we're just going to add the string identifiers to that list. So we're going to push the string identifier for this player onto that list. And so over, if 10 players join, our list will be 10 identifiers for a stream, and we can then use those identifiers to join those streams. Does that make sense so far? Perfect. Someone asked for links. Let me quickly get you the starter code. There is the starter code, and we are playing with Twilio Sync. Okay, so we are going to be pushing players to this list. We should do some error handling here. This will return another promise again. I'm going to skip over it for now. So we've now done 2 of our 4 steps. We've created the player and handled the key presses, and then we've added the player to the list. Now we need to iterate over the list and find other players. And this is where, I will be honest, lists in particular get a little bit gnarly. So we want to get all of the other players from our list, and to do that we can use the getItems method, and getItems takes a query object, so we can say we want to go from the start of the list and we want to take everything in order ascending. Where it gets not very pleasant is that this returns a what's called a paginator object. So there could be a lot of things in this list, right? There could be hundreds of thousands of objects, and so we get an object here, a paginator, to go through that list and consume them page by page, so we know we don't overwhelm our connection. I'm going to probably copy and paste this code in because it is not the nicest thing, and as I said, I'll be sharing the complete code at the end, so you can also copy and paste this in, but I'll explain it very briefly. Let's drop it in here. So we're going to build a little page handler that uses a paginator, and what the paginator will do will give us all the items in the list, and for each item we are going to initialize that player. So every item in the list is a identifier for a stream that represents a player. So we're going to take that identifier and we're going to initialize a player with it in the same way that we initialized ourselves, but we're going to spin up another version of that function to deal with the players. And so this will deal with this is what the paginator will do, and then we need to handle the fact that the paginator may reach the end of a page, and this paginator has next page. This ternary operator checks whether there is another page of results available, and if there is, it runs the function again, else it returns nothing and the paginator stops. So we're going to drop this into our getItems request. And again, here we should really put a catch, but we won't for now. So this is the part I've been worried about, because this is the worst piece of code in the whole demo. Again, if you don't understand this bit of code, that's not you. It is a gnarly part of this particular primitive. The list makes lots of things easy for us, but going through the list isn't. You don't get a simple iterable. You do have a paginator. How is everyone feeling? Adam has said, "Is that the real Joe Nash that can whistle?" I can indeed whistle. It was the crowning achievement of my 2021. I learned to whistle. That was the best thing about 2021. Okay, so I've called a function in this code. initialize player. We do not have that function. We are going to have to create that function. And as I said, that function is going to be very similar to the initialize player one that we already have. So we've created our own player, and now we need to create the other players. And this time we will have a SID and a sync client. So when we initialize another player, we're going to be doing more or less the same thing. We're going to be setting up one of these streams. But this time we do actually know what the stream should be called, because we're not creating a stream, we are subscribing to a stream. So we are taking all of the existing streams, all of the other players from our list, and then we are going to go through them and subscribe to them. Because when you do sync client.stream and then you put in a name, if that name already exists, it subscribes rather than creates. So we're going to be subscribing to it. And then we're going to do, so when we subscribe to it, we will then get a stream. And then once we have that stream, this is where we do more or less the same stuff we did before. So we're going to be creating a player. So we create a player. We're going to want to change some things about this, because you'll notice with our player character, we create the player in a random place. When we first subscribe to another player's data feed, we don't actually know where they are until they send us their first key press event. So, and we also don't know if those players are connected, because I'm not going to do anything like cleaning up disconnected players. So what we want to do is start all of the players kind of tucked away somewhere where we can't see them. So I'm going to get rid of the outline. I'm going to make the opacity 0 so we can't see them. And then the other thing I'm going to do is make their color random. So we'll make everyone's color random just so everyone looks a little bit different. It looks a little bit fun. So let's randomize everyone's colors. And then the last thing I'm going to do, one of the cool things about Kaboom, when you're creating objects, is you can just add kind of arbitrary labels. So I'm going to put everyone's SID into their object so we can query them if we need to. So we've created our player. And now we need to add handlers for publishing messages. So to every stream, you can add handlers, which are how you react to things happening on that stream. So what a stream does is it takes messages and it publishes them to everyone who's subscribed. So we need to subscribe to the stream by doing a message published event. And message published is the only event that really, that matters on a stream. Streams are very simple. They're just a pipe. Messages come in, we get them out. So when a message is published, that's when we want to do the movement, right? And so you'll recall earlier from our init player one that we are publishing our positions and our key presses. So we're going to want to look for these events. We're going to want to see if they contain key presses. So first of all, we're going to have to get the data out of these events. So an event contains a message, and that contains our data. And then from that data, we want to check which keys are being pressed. So for example, I could do key, if key data.key equals W. Then W is the up key. So then we're going to make this player jump, right? But there's actually something I need to do first, because as I said, I'm putting the player in the top corner, getting them out of the way, and I'm hiding them. So until a player first moves, we don't see them. So let's first of all check whether a player is hidden currently. And if they are hidden, let's unhide them and introduce them to the world. So first of all, we're going to do we're going to set their position to where the actual player actually is. And we do that with setting their position. And then we are going to set their opacity to 100, so they're visible. And then also give them an outline, because I took away the outline. Our player has an outline of 2, so we'll give them an outline. And then after this, we can just add all of our handlers. So we've got 3 keys, A and D. And A is left, so we want player.move -200, 0. And then D is right, so that's +200. So we create the Kaboom object for our other players. We hide them in the top corner, get them out of the way. And then when that player starts publishing messages, we reveal the player, and then we start making them move. You might be asking, why are we making them move on our client rather than just, publishing the position? If you just publish the position constantly and just constantly move that character to the position that you last got, you're going to be up against basically you're going to be fighting the internet. You are never going to get positions fast enough to do that in real time, and messages can be dropped over the internet. You might miss some messages, so movement could be weird. So what we're doing here is client-side simulation. Rather than getting the exact position, we're getting the last key press and simulating what would happen if that movement from that key press was applied to their character on our screen. Naively, without doing a lot of work, this is going to result in some slightly inaccurate positioning where like a player might be in a different place on my screen than they are on your screen. There's lots of ways of fixing that. That's for real game developers. We're messing about, so we'll deal with that later. So that is our initializing of players. So if we now go back to where we called this function, we have a list, we push ourselves onto it, and then we go through that list, and for every player that we find, we add the player to it. We check, we make a new player. We are checking whether we're adding ourselves. If the thing on that list is ourselves, we don't do this. If we do, if it's not ourselves, then we add it. So that is pretty much that, actually. That's more or less everything. The only other thing we need to do is deal with players joining in the middle of a session. And this is when we're going to... Oh, we did the subscribe to streams. The subscribe to streams happened here. So the only other thing we need to do is players joining in the middle of the session. So what happens if this gets the list at the start of our session, and those are the players it subscribes to. If a player joins in the middle of a session, we're going to need to do listen to one of the events on the list handler, which is item added. Item added is an event on lists. Whenever a new item is added to a list, this event will fire. So we can check if new players have joined. And if they've joined, we can do the same thing we've done here. We can literally do the same code and throw it in here. And then all we need to do is get the item. And the item is, much as with the streams, in the stream data, it's in the event and then it's data. So when an item is added, we create that player. Perfect. So it's been an awfully long time since I ran this code. And you know what that means. The first time we actually do this, it's going to explode in spectacular fashion. We've written all these functions, but we need to add them to our main loop. So we've got the sync client, we've got Kaboom, we've got the game set up, and then this is where we call init players with sync client. All right, chat, how are we feeling? How are we feeling? Do we... Shiva Jane has asked, hi, I'm in index.js. Where do we have to replace our function? So at the top of, if you've downloaded the GitHub repo and you've set up the Twilio function for your token generator, in the top of the index.js on line 11, nope, sorry. These instructions for the other code. Okay, so in my code, when you've got init sync and you've got this fetch request to a URL, where I've got my URL, this is where you put your function URL. So if you've set up the Twilio function, you put the URL for it here. Okay, so chat, do we think this code is going to work first try? Give me a Y if you trust me. Give me an N if you think we're doomed. Let me get a terminal up and let's serve this. Can I get some Ys in chat? Does anyone think this is going to work first go? So that's not looking good. Okay, that's fine. Simple typo. Simple typo on line 57. We forgot an argument. We forgot to close this list. Oh, no, we didn't. Why do you think we forgot to close this list? Oops. So it thinks we haven't closed this list, which is curious because we literally have. That's very interesting. I'm just going to take the stream sit out for now. Why though? Am I missing another bracket? Nope, nope, nope. Like, I can literally see it's closed. If I close this one, thanks to VS Code's amazing color pair doodads. I knew this would happen, chat. Knew this would happen. Missing comma? Maybe? I don't think so, though. Oh, here. There's a missing comma. Thank you. Thank you, friend. No, it still thinks it's open. Missing after element list. Opened at line 57. Do I still have npx serve running somewhere? No. Why? Oops. Why do you think you're missing? Another missing comma. Am I missing any other commas? Why am I getting missing commas reported rather than... Okay, we're making progress. Init sync client is not defined. Why is init sync client not defined? Line 113. Did I name it something different? I just named it init sync. Okay, there we go. That's easy enough. Hey, we're there. Okay. Sync client.list is not a function in players. We'll get there, chat. We will get there. That's not a function. Why is that not a function? Do I... So that's because I'm not calling this as a function. Whew. Okay, the speed debugging. We've still got 15 minutes. I think it works. Okay, and I can move around. Okay, let's get y'all in here. Let me engrok this. Okay. Y'all get in here. I've just posted the link in Twitch chat. Hopefully this works. I'm going to keep jumping around. If you joined and you do not see yourself jumping around, please let me know in Twitch chat. Ah! Something broke. Okay. Item.data is not defined. On line 46. Line 46. Why though? Event item.data, that should always exist. Because I'm already getting the data out. It is just SID, and then that's the same here as well. Okay. All right, chat. Everyone, mash refresh. Mash your refresh keys. Hey, there we go. We're there. Perfect. Okay, so 0. We went from a simple Kaboom game to one where we have working-ish multiplayer. We are using 2 sync objects. We're using a sync list to keep track of the player list, and then we're using streams to send the events fast enough that we can subscribe to them and that we can make people move around. As I kind of alluded to, if you were going to make a real-life multiplayer game like this does have some problems, and I just want to briefly state those problems are to do with the nature of real-time multiplayer games and not necessarily because of how we're sending the messages. You will see lots of opinions on the internet about TCP versus UDP for sending messages across, like, in multiplayer games. And all kinds of, reliability of the message sending, what happens if you drop messages. There are techniques for dealing with lag, for dealing with latency, for dealing with dropped messages. My favorite resource for those things is this series by an engineer named Gabriel Gambetta on how to create fast-paced multiplayer games. It deals with client-side prediction, it deals with cheating, it deals with lag and dropped packages. It is an amazing series, and I'm using some of those techniques. We're doing client-side prediction is the main thing we're doing here, but we're not doing anywhere near enough. So if you wanted to build a game this Local Hack Day Learn and you wanted users to build a multiplayer game, definitely check out what I just posted. But as I mentioned, Twilio Sync can be used to make collaborative text editors. It can be used to make collaborative Word, like documents. It can be used to make pretty much anything where you need to send data between one user and another in real time or in on a less or more sporadic pace, you can use it to build that. I wanted to do Twilio Sync this time around because last time we did WhatsApp and we looked at some other ways of doing different phone calls and stuff. And I know some folks had issues with getting numbers in their region. So everyone should be able to use this, whether you're on mobile, whether you're on web. And the complete code, this is the complete application. If you want to go just grab the finished code, if you got lost during that workshop, here is the complete code. You can go and follow that and get set up with your own little Kaboom.js multiplayer game. So I actually still, surprisingly, have 15 minutes, I believe. Does anyone have any questions? Anyone have any questions about any of the code, Twilio in general, anything we've covered during this session? The one question that I have, what VS Code theme am I using? That's a really good question. Let's go have a look. Settings, theme. I'm using Kimby Dark. Have I met Joe Nash yet? I haven't. I've heard he's a great guy. Thank you for these wonderful, useful questions, Adam. Actually, while we've got this extra time, let's talk about getting the function set up. So, as said, this relies on this doesn't require you to run any servers because we're using Twilio Sync and Twilio Functions. Twilio Sync is acting as our data service, and then Twilio Functions is a serverless provider. You can get to Twilio Functions from your Twilio console, and this is what it looks like. So when you go to the console, you can just search functions and you can jump into it from there. When you first go to Twilio Functions, you're going to need to create a service, and a service is just a collection of functions and environment variables. So I've created this service and I've called it Kaboom.js, and then that allows you to create functions and to give them an endpoint, a URL. So you're going to want to create a function called token, and then and then you want to paste the code from the repository that's in the token generator.js. You want to paste this code into it, and you don't need to edit it. You just need to paste that code straight into here. What you do need to do is set up your environment variables. So at the bottom of the settings, you'll see environment variables. You're going to need 3 environment variables. You're going to need your sync service identifier. You're going to need a Twilio API secret, and you're going to need a Twilio API key. The sync service identifier, when you, much as we create a new service with functions, we need to create a new sync service. So the thing we're going to be using to put our list and whatever in, we just create a new service, give it a name, and then that gives you an identifier, and it's right here. And you put that identifier into those environment variables. And then, the API key is actually super important. So your Twilio account has a SID and an auth token, and that is your username and password for using the Twilio API. You want to keep that safe. You don't want people using your credit. You don't want people sending messages on your behalf, misusing your account. But you also, that's your main one. It accesses everything on your Twilio account. So usually when you're creating an application, you don't use those credentials. You go and create a new API key, a new API token for the one application you're creating. So if worse comes to worse, if those API credentials do get exposed somewhere, they've only got access to that one application. And so you can do that from your account. You go to account, API keys and tokens, and you create a new API key and a new token just for your game there. And that's what I've done here. So I've created a new API key, a new API token, and then I've added it as an environment variable. Why do I no longer have my environment variables? I've added it as an environment variable. Oh, scroll down. I've added it as an environment variable here as Twilio API key, Twilio API secret. So that's where you'll get your other one from as well. Someone has asked, Twilio is asking for a phone number to verify. How can I bypass it? I don't believe you can. We require, there will be certain requirements to verify that I think the phone number gets used for security purposes as well. So like you'll get sent it will be used to like secure accounts. So for example, if I went to API keys right now, it will ask me for a verification code. And I don't actually know if it asked me for my, give me a sec. I don't know if it actually asked me for my number on sign up. Do you not have a phone number you can use, Lucifer? My gut instinct is it's a standard making sure you're a real human check. If you don't have a phone number you can use though, and you can't get past that, follow up with me in the Twilio channel on the Discord and I will dig into it and see what we can do. Yeah, Neon's made a great point. Just to point out, that phone number is your phone number to, you know, prove that you own the account. It's not the number you have to use on Twilio. When you get access to your Twilio account, if you're using one of the phone number products, you can buy Twilio numbers using the credit. You're not tied to sending from that phone number. That's just your personal phone number to verify that you are a human who owns this account. It's not you're not tied to that number. I think, Lucifer, now that I'm reading what you're saying and reading your original message, for the trial, it asks you to verify one number, because in the trial, if you, for example, are using Twilio SMS or Twilio Voice, so if you're using Twilio SMS or Twilio Voice, on the trial, you can only... Why is my Firefox just blocking everything today? Give me the... What? So on the trial, if you use Twilio Voice or Twilio SMS, you can only send messages to one verified number. And that's because on the trial, you know, it's a spam prevention thing. We want to make sure that people don't sign up for the trial and then send messages to loads of random people. So if it's asking you to verify a number, it's just verifying it's the number that you want to use to test your application. You know, if you don't want to use voice or SMS, it doesn't matter. If you're using Twilio Sync or using Twilio Video or you're using one of the other non-phone number dependent products, it doesn't matter at all. If you are using Twilio Voice or Twilio SMS, put in the number that you want to receive calls and messages on whilst you're developing your application. No, there's no time limit to the trial. With the Twilio trial, actually, there's a great article on this. Twilio trial limitations. Okay, so on the trial, you are limited to the amount of credit that you get on the account. So you get given some free credit. I think, I can't remember how much is on the coupon code we've given you for Local Hack Day. Let's have a look, see what it says. It doesn't say, and I can't remember. I will find that out. But so you'll get an amount of free credit, and then the other limitations are mentioned here. It's mostly about how you can use the product, and those limitations are in place just to prevent spam, basically. So you know, you can do everything, but there'll be limitations on it. Like you can send text and SMS and make phone calls, but you couldn't, you know, text 5,000 random people. You'd have to text only you know, a number that you have verified as belonging to you, so that, you know, you can develop and, you know, make your application, but you can't, you know, spam people. So that's those limitations are all here. There's no time limit, nothing like that. Any limitations are added on here. If you already had an account and you used the credit previously, as I said, I'll get a new code for existing accounts into the channel after this. I have to go open up another laptop to do that, but I'll get there shortly. Okay, so that is pretty much near the end of my time. So again, just to throw those links out. Again, we started with this code. And with that code, which is a Kaboom.js game. Kaboom.js is a really fun little JavaScript game library written by the fine folks at Replit, that allows you to make little games really quickly. It has a little interactive playground and all kinds of fun examples that you can mess around with. It's if you're interested in game development and you want to write a little game as fast as possible, Kaboom.js is really fun. We used that and then hit it with Twilio Sync. Twilio Sync is a way of sending data between websites, between mobile apps, between different users, and we used that to make it multiplayer. Is anyone else still in the session? I don't think anyone else is still in here. We use that to make it multiplayer by using a Twilio Sync list to keep track of our players, and then subscribing to a stream of moves for every player that allowed us to jump around. And then we had a good number of people in here jumping around. So just a reminder that throughout Local Hack Day, Twilio will be around. Your daily challenge today is to create a Twilio account and get your credit. Your week-long challenge from us is to learn how to use Twilio and create a Twilio app. So grab any Twilio product, anything you like, anything that you think is interesting. It could be what I showed you today. It could be the video from last Local Hack Day where we did WhatsApp. It could be literally anything. And there's a bunch of examples on this repository as well. Loads of blog posts, loads of cool stuff here from our hackathons repository put up by Lizzie Siegel. And by the end of the week, create an app and submit it to DevPost to complete that challenge. The daily challenges coming for the rest of the week will be based on Twilio quests. So a bunch of people in chat were saying that they didn't understand JavaScript or they were new to JavaScript. Twilio Quest is our educational video game that helps you learn to code, and it has missions on JavaScript. So you can learn JavaScript through a game, through Twilio Quest. It's a really fun way to learn. I'll spin it up right now and show you. It's like it's a 16-bit style game, so probably reminds you of Pokemon and this kind of thing. And it has you writing real code, and it evaluates it all within the game. So you can, for example, go and learn JavaScript through the JavaScript test lab. And then this walks you through a bunch of exercises, teaches you JavaScript or Python or APIs or Twilio or open source. Loads of missions in here, loads of content. And every day throughout Local Hack Day, there'll be a challenge to complete a mission in Twilio Quest. So if you want to learn something new during this Local Hack Day build, and some of the things in this workshop have been unfamiliar to you, maybe you didn't know JavaScript, maybe it's your first time using GitHub, there is content on that within Twilio Quest, and you can complete Local Hack Day challenges by doing it. And as you play Twilio Quest throughout the week, we will have a competition running for the most amount of XP. That is details for how to enter are in tomorrow's challenge. So if you are interested in that, that is where you will find it. And otherwise, that is pretty much everything from me. I'm just checking for other questions, sorry. How do we complete all the challenges when Local Hack Day? There's a lot of challenges, and I don't think anyone could possibly tell you how to complete them all. If you drop into the Discord, though, there's loads of helpful folks who will be able to walk you through those challenges day by day. I believe in the Discord there is a build chat channel. There's also loads of help channels. Loads of folks from MLH and loads of folks who've been part of Local Hack Day for a long time are in there helping out. So if you need help with any of the challenges, you can't find anything about the challenges. Okay, the challenges are here. This does say past challenges, though, which is slightly worrying. But the challenges are here, Brash. This is where you can find all the challenges, I think. Yes, this is where you can find all the challenges. And then, yeah, as Neon said, it's definitely, there are competitive elements, but this is definitely more of a learning and building experience than it is a competition. So take up the challenges that are interesting to you. Learn new things, build stuff with it, but don't feel like you're under pressure to compete, unless you're taking place in the Twilio Quest operation, in which case you are under pressure to compete. But it's a game, it's for fun. Why? Rad. So, if there are no further questions, I will sit here, chilling out, waiting for Resendo to yeet me out of the screen. Yeet me, Resendo.
Amazing. I have an echo. Give me a moment. This echo is going to be bad. I have no idea how to diagnose it. Thank you for joining us, y'all. Thank you, Joe. And that's me. That's the awesome reverb. Thanks a lot, y'all. Have a good one.